No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. These are difficult words for us to hear today. I look back way too often. Do you? And there is hope in these three readings and the psalm we read together, despite, or maybe because of, the confusing words and tangled stories. The portion of Luke we just heard draws our attention to the change about to take place. It's a description of what the disciples who were following Jesus noticed, or at least how Luke wants us to remember those events. What Luke points toward is a focus and commitment on the part of Jesus. When the days grew near for Jesus to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. The phrase "set his face" is considered by at least one commentator to be a prophetic act, and it indicates stern resolution and single-mindedness similarly exhibited by Moses, Elijah, and Ezekiel. And we hear this focus, this single-mindedness, in our reading from Kings and our reading from the Epistle today. This single-mindedness, this focus, it's a notable shift in Jesus' ministry that had been centered in Galilee. Now he changes the direction and heads toward Jerusalem. The more direct route to Jerusalem is through Samaria, but most people traveled another route to Jerusalem to avoid conflict and violence with the Samaritans. Like his travel to the country of the Gerasenes that we saw last week, travel to Samaria was a border crossing, an encounter with people outside the Israelite Jewish community. Jesus' border crossings show us that God's love and healing are available to all people. And Jesus, with his disciples, will bring that message of peace and abiding love. The Samaritans are hostile and they reject him. John and James want to bring destruction. Jesus rebukes them, saying that's not the way of God's love and peace. In our language, it's not the way we roll. This mission, this message, is to be spread beyond Judea, even when that means responding to the rejection, not with violence, but by shaking the dust off their feet and going to the next village. The focus is on spreading the message of God's love and healing. And we hear some who want to follow Jesus aren't yet capable of the focus Jesus requires in this mission. One is warned that this mission will not have the comforts of home. There's no den, there's no nest, no place to lay their heads. Two others are told to let go of family ties and to not look back. Challenging words for people then and for us today. What is required to be a follower of Jesus? Walking with Jesus and proclaiming the kingdom means accepting demands that are more stringent. Jesus' disciples share in both his rejection and his destiny. Following Jesus requires a big commitment and a resolute focus. This story also points to God's unending and abundant love for us, God's people, God's focus on us. When Jesus rejects violence against the Samaritans, God's all-encompassing love shows through. And this is the focus of Luke's entire gospel, the abundance of God's love for the whole world, not just a select group. When our focus is on God's unquenchable love for all people, for all creation, it will change the way we see ourselves. and how we encounter our friends, how we relate to our families and at work, and how we live as disciples of Jesus, participants in the Jesus movement. Just as Jesus forgave those who crucified him, God forgives us and loves us. But being that loved is hard for some to believe and accept. And loving and forgiving that deeply is hard for most of us to do. Being Christian and following Jesus is in stark conflict with today's culture of materialism and greed, of rushing to judgments, of hate and exclusion of anyone who is different. Jesus invites us to walk the journey with him, facing the challenges of bigotry and fear-mongering with a countenance of God's love for all. And we see examples of people living the Jesus movement. I remember after the shooting in North Carolina church, forgiveness was given by the families of the victims. The LGBT and Latina communities did not wage a campaign of violence following the mass shooting in Orlando. They have remained focused on living a gospel of love, particularly during the month of June known as Gay Pride Month, culminating in a week of celebrations and the largest parade right here in New York City. This is a time of transition in our world and our country. It feels like upheaval is just around the corner. Violence against others occurs at home and abroad multiple times a day. The people of the UK have rejected their membership in the European Union, destabilizing global economies and shaking our confidence. And this gospel reading calls us to focus even more on our belief that God's love is here and to be messengers of that love in all we do. To follow Jesus and help build a world where all may dwell, not in spite of our differences, but using our differences as building blocks. In a hymn, Jesus asks us and invites us, "Will you come and follow me? If I but call your name, will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown